So you're trying to grow your video business. You want to hit 10, 20, 50k per month. You want to work on fulfilling projects with your dream clients, or just have the resources to upgrade all of your kit and buy all the stuff that's been in your basket for months or even years. But no matter what you do, the weeks and months tick by and you go through this feast or famine cycle where you're completely busy one month and then dry the next. I was on a call the other day with one of my good friends and freelancers that we use on a regular basis, and he's trying to do just that. He wants to grow his business, increase his income, charge more for his projects, etc, etc, etc. Now, the very first thing that I'm asking when we're in a situation like this is, tell me the numbers, right? How many leads are you getting? How many appointments are you booking? How many of those appointments are converting into sales? At what price? What's the average order value? After digging into these details for like 5 or 10 minutes, it became apparent that even though he roughly knew how many inquiries he was getting and how much money he had charged the month before, he didn't know exactly. And exactly is the point that we need to get to. If you don't know your numbers, then you can't affect areas in the business that lead to the cause of the business actually growing. Numbers don't lie. They're not influenced by your emotions. They don't care what you think is working and what you think isn't working. They're going to tell you point blank what's working and what's not, and lead to you making data-driven decisions that's genuinely going to impact your business moving forward. In this video, I'm going to give you the secret sauce. I'm going to gift you the holy grail of spreadsheets that you can use on a week-by-week basis that's going to act as your compass to guide you to a business that's healthy and sustainable over the long term. Now, I know that spreadsheets and data aren't as exciting as behind-the-scenes projects or fancy tech reviews, but believe me when I say that taking 15 minutes once per week to track your numbers and track your data is going to be the biggest leap forward that you're going to make in your business to date. You don't need some fancy CRM or complicated formulaic software that costs hundreds per month. You need one Google Sheet that you can use for free, and I'm going to give you it and show you how to use it in this video. I don't want your money, I don't want your email. The spreadsheet is literally linked in the description for anybody that wants it, and I promise that within 1 month of using this spreadsheet, you will have so much clarity on what's working, what's not, but most importantly, what you can do next. Let's get into it. Alright, so welcome to the OG KPIs spreadsheet. We're not going to do any more talking, we're going to dive in. I'm going to show you how to use this beast. So we're going to start off with how to make and use this spreadsheet for yourself. So when you first open up the spreadsheet, you won't be able to edit it because it will be a non-editable copy. So all you need to do is go File, make a copy, save it in your own Google Drive, and then once you've done that, you can then change the business name. So for me, that would be OG Films, and then we change the month as well, which would be January. Now, obviously you might be watching this at a completely different time of year. You can see this little tab down here says Jan. You just change that to whatever it is, right? February, March, whatever month you're kind of editing this. For the sake of the video, let's just say that it's January. The next thing you need to do is you need to change the weeks. So you need to go into your calendar and you need to essentially, what I do is I always start it on the 1st, and then I do this every single Monday. So essentially, like on January, we start on the 1st because that's the first of the month, and then the next Monday is the 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th, and then that takes you to the end of the month. So this one will always be 01, whatever the month is, whatever the year is, and then these should always start on a Monday. So you always need to change the dates in here. Now we're going to break down each metric. So we start off with leads. Now we define leads as any lead that's come into the business, whether that's you reaching out to someone else, whether they reached out to you, however they came into the business, that's a lead that's looking for work that you can do, right? We then go on to calls. So calls, essentially, when a lead comes into the business, you should always be looking to book a call with them. That's essentially just to find out what they need, what their pains are, how you can help, all of that sort of stuff. So then a lead converts to a call, which then gives you an appointment booking rate. So essentially, if you had 10 leads that came into the business and 5 of them book calls, then your appointment booking rate would be 50%, which would be phenomenal, right? That's a really good appointment booking rate. So you can see that the spreadsheet will just calculate that for you, and I'll go into manual inputs and stuff in a second. What we've then got is quotes. Now this is pretty self-explanatory, but any calls that you then quoted, let's say that you quoted 3 of those, and then you go on to whether that quote converted or whether it didn't convert, right? So whether you won the quote, and let's say that you won 2 of those, which gives you a 66.67% sales conversion rate. What we then do is we take the revenue from those 2 sales. So let's say it was 2 sales at like 2,000, right? So that would be 4,000 in terms of the revenue, which gives you an average order value of 2,000. and then your cash in is essentially just how much cash came into the business that week, right? So it's not the quotes. You have to put cash in when cash actually comes into the business. Revenue and cash are completely different things, right? You might actually get this job and they might, you know, sign the contract, sign the quote or whatever, but you might not do it for another like 2 months, let's say, right? So we're only focusing on cash that comes into the business here. Let's say that was another 2,000. And then your cash out is cash that goes out of the business, so money that you've spent, you know, let's say that's 500, right? This then will calculate your profit, or it should calculate your profit. If it doesn't, then you just go equals sum, and you go this number minus this number, which gives you your profit, and then it will calculate your profit percentages as well. Okay, you can drag all those down, and then that will just basically do that formula across all of these different weeks. So that's what each metric means, right? You've got leads, calls, appointment booking rate, quotes, sales conversion rate, your revenue, your average order value, cash in, cash out, which gives you profit in pounds or dollars or whatever your currency is, and then your percentage profit as well. Now let's look at manual inputs versus calculations. And you would have seen that kind of as I filled out those metrics just here. But essentially, leads, calls, quotes, revenue, cash, and then these two will calculate themselves as well. So you've got these that you need to manually input and track that data. Now, kind of goes without saying, but if you don't have a spreadsheet like this already, I'm assuming that you're not tracking any of these metrics anywhere else. If you are, that's great. But we basically have a separate spreadsheet for essentially each one of these different metrics up here, right? So I can go into my leads, you know, I've got outbound, I've got inbound, we've got stuff that comes through the website, cold DM, cold email, all of that sort of stuff, right? All the leads, they're in a separate spreadsheet. Calls is then essentially like a sales tracker, right? So all the calls that you've had, the quotes that you've sent out, which will be in the sales tracker again. One is then the invoices that we get sent out. Revenue I track through the sales tracker. Cash in, cash out is just the bank, and then this will calculate itself, right? So essentially you need to just go in and input all of these details manually. Now I want to talk about working backwards from your goal. So essentially what you can do is you can say that you want to make a certain amount per month, you know, whether that be 10, 20, 50, whatever arbitrary number you've kind of set as a goal for the business. Let's just say that you want to make, I don't know, in a month you want to have, let's just say like 10,000, right? So I'm actually going to get rid of that. Let's just put 10,000 in profit, yeah? Now you need to calculate your profit margin. So you may not have this number. We run the business on 35% margins. That's everyone from the freelancers, travel, software subscriptions, upgrades, all of that sort of stuff, right? 35% margin. So if we take 10,000, we can then essentially work out like how much cash needs to come in for us to actually make 10,000 in profit based on a 35% margin. So to do that, essentially all we do is we reverse engineer kind of what we're looking for, so 10,000, and then if we just pull a quick calculation here, we would do like equals sum 10,000, and then we would want to divide that by 0.35. Okay, so £28,571.43, right? That's how much cash would have to come into the business on a 35% margin so that we make 10,000. So essentially, we can put that in here. Let's just say 28,600 for ease of maths. And then what went out is 18,600, right? Which gives us our profit. So then if we run that calculation just like this, then we get 10,000, right? On a 34.97% margin, you know? Okay, so that's giving you all of those details just there. So then based on these numbers, what we can then do is calculate the amount of jobs that need to come in order for us to get 28,600 in cash into the business, right? So let's say that the average order value was like 5,000, yeah? Then essentially what we need to do is we need to take 5,000, so equals sum 5,000 divided by, or it would actually be 28,600 divided by 5,000. So 5.72 jobs need to be won, which is basically 6 jobs, right? So 6 jobs need to be won in order for us to then have 28,600 into the business. Okay? For the quotes, you then take your sales conversion rate. So let's say that your sales conversion rate sits at like 30%, which will kind of be an average sales conversion rate. That means that we need to understand that 6 divided by 0.3, and then that will give you the sales conversion rate that you need, right? So equals sum, let's try that again, equals sum 6 divided by 0.3 is 20 quotes. So we need 20 quotes at 30% sales conversion rate to win £28,000 worth of work at £5,000 average order value to give you 10,000 of profit. Okay, so hopefully this is beginning to make sense. Now we need to understand our appointment booking rate and essentially like how many calls are converting into quotes. So that could be another metric that you track, but I don't want to give you too many metrics in this video to focus on. We'll just kind of focus on these main ones here, right? But let's say that, you had 25 calls and then 20 of those you got quotes from, and then you need to understand your average appointment booking rate, which for us is anywhere between like 10 to 20%. So let's just say it's 10%. That means that we need 250 leads to get 25 calls at a 10% ABR, 20 quotes, 1/6 of them at a 30% sales conversion rate to give us £28,600 in revenue at £5,000 average order value with that much cash out. £10,000 profit at a 35% margin, right? So that's kind of working backwards from your goal. You can reverse engineer these metrics if you know the other numbers, or you can kind of theorize on the other numbers that might be there to give you exactly what you're looking for in terms of the money that you're looking to make, right? So the next thing is when to do this spreadsheet. And I mentioned at the start of the video that I do this every single Monday. The reason why is because that's a fresh week. I can look back over all of the data. So I would highly recommend doing this on a Monday. But if you're not usually free on a Monday, then don't do that, right? Like just pick a day where you know that you're going to be free at a particular time. Like it could be Saturday or it could be Sunday or whatever, right? Pick a day where you've got 15 minutes. That's literally all this takes just to go through, find those numbers and input them into the sheet, right? 15 minutes. Pick a day and then just make sure that you do it every single week. If you miss a week, like don't worry about it too much. Don't say that the whole thing's fucked just because you missed 1 week, but you really want to do this as consistently as you possibly can because you're going to be able to see patterns, right? You're going to be able to see what's working and what's not on a week by week basis and hopefully be able to react to those things quite quickly in order to actually, affect those causes in your business. So now I'm going to go through and kind of show you some example stuff, so how this sheet may look after a month, and then we can essentially then investigate and expose bottlenecks. So we'll do these two in one. Cool, so we've got some example data in here now, and let me just kind of talk you through what's going on, and essentially then we can investigate and expose some bottlenecks in here as well. So let's just say that you reached out to 10 people per day every single day of the week. So it gives you 50 leads per week, or you had inquiries come through, etc., right? That gives us 250 leads for the month. The calls off the back of these leads is 5% ABR. So you had 12 calls, 250, it's basically 4.8 or 5% ABR. You quoted 9 of them, you won 5 of them, which gives you an over a 50% sales conversion rate, which is fantastic. Revenue was 12,000, so basically then just 2,400 average order value per job. The cash that you collected was 7,500, the cash out was 2,250. Let's just make this 50 for ease of maths, 2,550. Profit is basically £5,000, 4,950 at a 66% margin. Now, these numbers are pretty fantastic in terms of kind of what you should expect to see. But if we wanted to essentially look at this as some data and investigate where things might be going wrong or what's working or what's not, we can look at these numbers and essentially then attribute how that would change if those numbers did change, right? So 250 leads, that's pretty sound, like in terms of a month. You could look to increase this. So essentially, like, you've got to understand that things work, they're fractal in nature, right? So things work, if it works on a micro scale, it will work on a macro scale. So if you wanted to double the amount of profit and get to 10 grand a month, all you need to do, in theory, is reach out to double the amount of people, which is going to double all of this. Even if all of these numbers stayed the same, that number there would double just based on the fact that all of these numbers would double because the first input into the system is doubling, right? So that would become 500, this would be 24, that would be the same. Quotes would be 18, one would be 10, a 2,400 average order value, etc., all the way through, right? So if all of the numbers stayed the same, all you need to do is double the amount of leads. You can then look at the bottlenecks to say, like, okay, so I'm going to try and improve my appointment booking rate. So the same amount of leads, but let's say you want like 15 calls instead of 12. If we change that to 15, then let's just affect this. So if we change that to 15, then we get a 6% appointment booking rate, which essentially should mean that then this number goes up because you're speaking to more people, right? So let's say that changes to 11, and then you win like 6 of them at a 2,400 was your average order value. So this would then go up to 14,400. which keeps that at 2,400. Then logically you would collect a bit more cash. You would probably spend a little bit more if you've got kind of freelancers and team and stuff like that, which means that your profit would go up as well. So what you can do is you can go in and you can play with these numbers and essentially theorize how that would affect the final number that we're looking at, which is essentially profit, right? That's the main number that we want to look at. So now we're going to talk about adding notes, reviewing, and planning. So we kind of just did that in terms of the review, right? We look at these numbers and we say, okay, what's working, what's not, and then what we're going to change the next month. So based on that previous example, you could say, okay, all we're going to do is we're going to double the amount of leads that we reach out to, so it's 20 per day instead of 10 per day in this example, right? So then you've got this section just here. Now, obviously this is filled with kind of my notes to make the video at the moment, but essentially what you want to do is delete this and then you just add your notes here, right? Which could be like the fact that you're going to reach out to double, okay? So you could say like, reach out to double the amount of leads, get an appointment setter or VA to do this for me, right? Because you're doubling the amount of leads, you might not have double the time, etc., right? So you might then need to hire an appointment setter or a VA to come in and then run that system for you, right? So super simple. You basically just put in what worked, what didn't, what you're happy with, what you're not, and then you can then look to that and then implement those things into the next month, right? So then we've got how to test and change inputs. So what's really important is that when you're theorizing, right? So let's take that previous example where we're doubling the amount of people that we're reaching out to. What you want to do is only change one thing at one time. Now, the reason why this is so important is because if you change multiple different things, like if you change your messaging sequence for your appointment booking rate, or you change the way that you do your quotes, or you change the way that you do your sales process, and you double the amount of leads at the same time, you don't know whether it was the leads or the other changes that you made, let's say like your sales script or the way that you pitch or that sort of thing, right? You don't know whether it was that or the other thing that made the difference. So it's really important that we change things one thing at a time without messing up the rest of the business, right? So what you want to do is you want to go file, make a copy, and then in this you can put like the test that you're doing, right? So you could say like that this is a test for February where we're doubling the amount of leads. Now you only want to do this for a small percentage of the thing that you're actually doing, because this here is working, right? You're making money, you're at a 66% profit rate, everything's good, but you want things to be better. So it's really important that we don't mess up the business that we currently have. We only want to test in a very small pool of leads or calls or sales calls or that sort of thing, so that we're not wrecking the rest of the business, right? Essentially what you want to do is duplicate this spreadsheet, and then you'll be tracking two different things at once. Don't get ahead of yourself, but like essentially it's not that hard, right? You just track two different things in terms of where you're making the changes and where you're not, and then you see how that affects the metrics and the inputs that you're putting into the system. If it's better, then you move everything over to that system. If it's not, then you go back to the old system, and you essentially just change another thing, and you carry on doing this process until you find that kind of golden thing that works, right? Really important that you only test one change at one time in a small pool, because you don't want to wreck the rest of the business. Lastly, we're moving into kind of the final stages here, but we're starting a new month. Now, this couldn't be simpler. Essentially what you do is you right click on there, you duplicate that month, you would change this to Feb, right? If it is the next month, you change this here to Feb as well. You change these dates, like I mentioned right at the start of the video, and then you want to delete all of this, right? Now, obviously, there's some calculations in here, so what you can do is you can just delete the manual inputs, or you can just go back through and add the formulas if you want to, right? It's totally up to you, but you can do it like this, and just change the manual inputs, and then that should reset everything kind of back down to zero, right? And then these would obviously be calculations that we've changed because I was kind of teaching you how to use the spreadsheet. But yeah, essentially you go through this. Let me just show you, right? So this is a divide of this and this. This is a divide of this and this. The revenue is a manual input, but we want to calculate that as a total. So that's all of those. Cash in is the same, cash out is the same, and then profit and profit percentage will calculate, right? So it's super simple. That's how you make a new month. Nice and easy. You've essentially got a blank to work with now, right? Obviously, like I said, you just change these dates. The last thing to talk about, we're nearly there, Last thing is the year-to-date sheet. So this is here, right? Now, essentially, this will allow you to compare month to month, quarter to quarter, and all of the different all of the different months within the business. So you need to look at each month individually, break it down in terms of weeks, and then we look at each month individually in comparison to the other months kind of within the sheet, right? The way that you do this is this formula just here, right? So if you wanted to kind of do Feb, then you just change that to Feb, and then all of those numbers will calculate, and then you should just make some calculations in here that give you the average of all of this, right? Some will be the total, so leads, calls will be the total. That essentially, right, it's these calculations just here, but on the year to date, on a Q1 scale. So just think of those as weeks, and then that's your totals down the bottom. And essentially what this will do is it will give you your entire year in review. So you can go in, you can basically see the changes that you made and how it affects things in the business, and the ways that you change things to essentially get to the goals that you want. The year to date, super simple. As I said, you just change the business name in here and then a year in here, and then all of this data should auto populate based on this as a calculation or as a formula, right? So that's it. That's the spreadsheet. Okay, so that's it. The holy grail of spreadsheets that you can use on a week-by-week basis that's going to actually affect genuine change within your business. They say that you should always make content for the person that you were 2, 3, 4 years ago. And if I had this tool 2, 3, 4 years ago, if I understood leads, calls, quotes, average order values, price, profit, all of this stuff 2 to 3 years ago, I would be so much further along in my journey. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I hope that you've got some value out of it. I genuinely hope that you take this tool and you do that 15-minute task every single week, because it's genuinely going to change so much in your business. If you did enjoy the video, if you did find this helpful, then make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with somebody else that may benefit from using this tool. And with all of this being said, I will catch you in the next one. Take care.